JMU tries to wrap up the regular season title as the Sun Belt wraps up the regular season on Friday. It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, hello, welcome back to Locked On Sun Belt, your teams every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. We will get to the second seed. Amazing how none of these teams are actually playing each other on the final regular season game. You would think one of these matchups would have something on the line, and you got to go all the way to Marshall and App State. And I'm not going to try and figure out the tiebreaker if App State beats Marshall for them to tie. So a lot of these teams can actually move up, but they can move down if they lose. So, and then we'll quickly scan the baseball weekend series. I do know the Cajuns are heading out west to take on UC Irvine, but JMU with a win over Texas State, and Texas State is one of those teams that, again, with a loss can move down, but really can't move up with a win. So I guess there is something on the line. Technically, I guess we could look where they are in the standings. They're about 7th or 8th. Let me check that out. There's 3 of them at the 8 and 9 mark. Texas State, Georgia State, and the Cajuns are all 8 and 9, and none of them play each other again. As we mentioned, JMU plays Texas State, but Marshall and App State are up next. Marshall is 11 and 6, and App State is 10 and 7. And so the best that these 3 teams can do is finish at 9 and 9 if they all win. But if they lose, they can move down. Technically, they're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're all tied for 7th. And so that would be obviously a big difference if you are the 7th seed or the 10th seed in this tournament coming up. So there is a little bit on the line for, all these teams, as it turns out. All right. And South Alabama has a lot on the line with the Cajuns. All right. Obviously, we'll get to that. But JMU has impressively, right? They are the defending Sun Belt tournament champions, and they had the big win over Wisconsin, took it on the chin against Duke. And, if you could look, Mark Byington just had another big win with Vandy. It's going to be tough, and it comes down to expectations more than what actually got done on the court. And I'm sure Auburn was seen as a top 10 team. My point is that Mark Byington could very well be the coach of the year, but it's sometimes tough to overcome when you are the best team in the nation. But Mark Byington is doing a fantastic job with Vandy and very well could get to the NCAA tournament again. Kind of a little bit under the radar with all those great teams in the SEC with Auburn up top. It's going to be, to me, it's going to be tough to not give Bruce Pearl coach of the year in the SEC, but Mark Byington is certainly going to go get his votes. All right. Remember, App State was the regular season champion last year, but they got knocked off in one of those games where it may have been Arkansas State, where they played early. And let's check that out now that I'm yapping about it. Where did Arkansas State knock them off? Because that happens. That's happened a bunch over the last few years. Unfortunately, won't be at the championship this year. First time in I don't think I went last year. Oh, I did go last year. But first time in a minute, won't be there. Let me see if we got the tournament bracket here. Let's see here. That's what I want to see. Yeah, there you go. App State, they, took down the Cajuns. I think the Cajuns swept App State last year. But they took down Arkansas State. did they get a day off? I don't think they did. They played Saturday and Sunday. Well, no, I'm sorry. App State played in the quarterfinals. So no, I guess they didn't. But Arkansas State upset App State. None of those teams got upset. Is that what happened? No. The Cajuns beat Coastal. Georgia, App State beat Georgia Southern. Texas State took down Troy last year, is what happened. And James Madison made it through, I think, relatively easy. I have to go back and see. That may have been a close ball game with Marshall. But Texas State did take down Troy. And that's one of those things where, in Texas State, I mean, they played a bunch of ball games. They were one of the first they were one of the first 4 teams in. And they beat Old Dominion, they beat Southern Miss, and they beat Troy. And they, played James Madison in the semifinals. Goodness. So they played 4 ball games. That's a lot. Whereas, James Madison was playing, that was only 2. That's a big difference. So we'll see what happens in this case. And James Madison's got to play Texas State, ironically enough. And that's not going to be easy. We found out it's not easy to play on the road. We know that. That's my mantra. Probably have to play a little bit better than they did against ULM. Texas State is tough at home, although do I think they didn't play very well against Troy? Did Troy do a number on them the other night? Is that what happened? Well, no. Troy eked by him 74-69. So Troy went into San Marcos and beat him 74-69. So that's a close ball game as well. And that was very close. That was a 1-point game with 2 minutes left to go, 67-66. So that was very close as well. So got to think that JMU's got to play a little bit better. Again, ULM kept on coming, and they got within 1. They never took the lead. Or maybe, in fact, came within 2. They never tied it or took the lead against JMU. And I'm not sure how much is on the line. We'll just say, for the sake of this argument or this conversation or this podcast episode, South Alabama is 2, Troy is 3, and Arkansas State is 4. All right, if all those teams win and JMU wins. So that's the difference between playing, JMU would end up playing Arkansas State, where South Alabama gets Troy. If that makes a difference. I don't know. I don't know if that makes a huge difference. Isaiah Nelson's playing really, really well for Arkansas State. If you're South Alabama, you'd really like to play Arkansas State because they haven't figured out your zone yet. Not at all. That could just be a bad matchup. Nelson had a really good ball game against South Alabama, but nobody else did. One could also say it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a season. So we don't know. Just saying, there's still a lot on the line. It may not be quite as much as we think, because I think JMU's still in line to get the 2nd seed if they lose. I think. All right. But South Alabama, obviously, you like to hang the banner, and Preston Spradlin has that chance at coming in first year and getting that done. So I think that would be pretty cool as a first year coach. Becoming, regular season champs, first time out. So I think that is, I think that's really cool. So that's a possibility. That's a very distinct possibility. I don't know if we have the line to this ballgame yet. Maybe we do. I figured Texas State is favored, but only by a couple. Let me see. Now, it wouldn't be a big line if it is. There doesn't seem to be a line right now. So, again, Texas State would be favored only because they're at home. It does not seem to be a line as of right now. Okay. So I figure James Madison will win this ball game. It's certainly not for sure, but I'm going to say James Madison is going to be your regular season champ, and they're going to enter in not on an overall 11-game winning streak, but an 11-game Sun Belt winning streak, which after we saw that they were favorites at home against Troy when they won 5 in a row and looked at their schedule and saw it was a little cushy, except for the road games, but a little cushy. This is not surprising us. So we sort of saw this coming. Although when South Alabama beat Arkansas State, I didn't think South Alabama was going to lose to Texas State. No, those two things didn't add up. But here we are. All right. Let's take a timeout. Having said JMU in line for the regular season title, South Alabama, Arkansas State, and Troy still shooting for the number 2 seed. And we'll talk about the rest of the conference as well. Right after I tell you about Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get life insurance that fits your family needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. So protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. And Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, so having said JMU is going to win the regular season title, we think. South Alabama taking on the Cajuns. Arkansas State's got ULM, although at ULM, and Troy's got a Southern Miss. I think Troy is at home. I just looked at it, and I don't know. The South Alabama has the Cajuns. I'd say that's the toughest game, but they're the ones at home. Let me see where Troy is. Troy is at Southern Miss. Arkansas State is at ULM. Still, those two games should be wins for Arkansas State and Troy. And when it's a 3-way tie, you add up all the games. And because South Alabama, although they split with Troy, swept Arkansas State. So South Alabama would get the 2 seed. I can't tell you why Troy gets it over Arkansas State. I think it might have to do with, does it have to do with JMU? No. Troy lost to JMU, and Arkansas State, I believe, lost to JMU. Yeah. Marshall, did Troy beat Marshall? Troy did not play. Troy did beat Marshall, so maybe that's it. Okay, so maybe that's it. All right. I'm gonna tell you, be a little bit disappointed if I'm Arkansas State, predicted to win the regular season and finish 4th. Now it doesn't really matter all that much because only one team's going. Right. It's a little bit about seeding. You do have to win an extra ball game. So you'd have to win 3 instead of 2. Not that big a deal. The biggest difference between this tournament and the previous tournament before is that day off. That's where, getting that higher seeding wasn't all that big a benefit because those teams would play, on a Wednesday or something like that, and then get the Thursday off and then play on Friday. Whereas the other teams hadn't played for a week. And so these teams got to play, have a day off, and then play again. Wasn't much of an advantage. And teams, as I just told you, Troy got knocked off last year by Texas State. Although that was Texas State's third game, but in like 4 days or something like that. They may have had 2 days off in there. They had at least 1 day off in there. That's the biggest difference. And if you go through it, we'll see if anybody does. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Georgia State upsets somebody because they can score, although they can't play defense. Defense has improved, although they just lost to Coastal. How do you explain that? Wouldn't be surprised if the Cajuns surprise somebody. I would say I'm taking App out of this. I do happen to think that any of the top 5 teams can win it, and I'm including Marshall in this. I think any of those. I don't think there is one team that is heavily favored heavily favored is not the right term here, is dramatically better than anybody else, right? I mean, South Alabama lost not once, but twice in basically the same 7 days because of the snowstorm to ULM. They lost twice to ULM in a row. JMU, by the way, got hammered early on in the season by South Alabama. That's got South Alabama off and running. They just barely escaped ULM, right? South Alabama beats Arkansas State. Arkansas State couldn't score, and if South Alabama could have hit a free throw or 2 or 8, they would have beaten Arkansas State by double digits, and then they couldn't put away Texas State and lose in overtime in a crazy finish. Great basketball game. I think the game of the year. Marshall's all of a sudden coming on. Troy is a tough beat. Arkansas State may be the most talented, but they've only won 2 of their last 6 ball games. I happen to think it's wide open. This is what I will be shocked at. I will be shocked if it's the top 2 seeds in the finals. I'm just going to go back and look at that. Maybe we'll look at that for Monday's episode. The last time it was the top 2 seeds. We'll look at that right now. When was it the last top 2 seeds? We got the media guide. Can I see them? We got the record book here. Let me see here. If we can look at the record book. The last time it was the top 2 seeds in the conference tournament, because this is just going to be conference records. I don't know if it's going to give me the tournament. They got the tournament teams. I'm going to have to go through. Well, this is going to give me, it does give me the tournament results. All right. So let's go. All right. 24, 2-4. All right. 23, 2-8. 22, 3-8. 21, 4-1. That's when we had East. All right. Nothing in 20 due to COVID. You got to go to 2019 was 1-2. Georgia State and UTA was 1-2 in 2019. That's once. Let's go back. 2018, 2-4. That was a good Cajuns team that lost to UTA. All right. 2017 was 6-4. Troy beat Texas State that year. 2016, Little Rock beat number 2 ULM. Boy, my mind's blank. ULM was number 2 seed in basketball. Goodness. Wow. All right, so that's twice. Little Rock was your champion. Is that men's? Yeah. So that's twice, 16 and 19. I'm telling you, that's more. And then the year before, I do remember this ball game. Georgia State beat Georgia Southern 38-36. My goodness. That's crazy. I remember that one. So that's back-to-back years. You had 1 and 2 in 15, 16, and before that in 19. 14 was when the Cajuns won. That's when I showed up, 1 and 3. But before that, boy, you didn't have at all. You did have in 2010, you had 1 and 2. That's way back when. So since, well, as far as I'm concerned, the Sun Belt started when I got here. So since 2014, you had it 3 times, 15, 16, and 19, when the top 2 seeds are there. Now, I don't think it's going to happen this year either. Just because I think the teams are so close and the way these teams play, not with high-powered offenses, but with good defenses, and specifically South Alabama. Arkansas State may have a high-powered offense. JMU can score a little bit. But the way South Alabama is methodical with their offense, they actually, it's not defensively the way they play. They're methodical with their offense. And if they're shooting threes well, then they're tough to beat, as is everybody. Thank you, Captain Obvious. All right, let's take a timeout. We will come back. Hold on. Quickly, let's go over the rest of the standings. We'll do that. I promised you that. Let me go over the rest of the standings to see where we are and who's playing who. So you got, again, James Madison going for number 1. They're taking on Texas State. Arkansas State is at ULM. South Alabama is hosting the Cajuns. Troy is at Southern Miss. Marshall and App State are going at it. Again, I don't know if that is a big difference between 5th and 6th. Marshall's already beaten App State, so I'm not sure if App State wins, can they get to the 5th seed. We know Texas State is taking on JMU, and we know the Cajuns are taking on South Alabama. Georgia State's got their rival, Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern 7-10. Old Dominion is taking on Coastal Carolina. They had the win over Georgia State the other day. And so Southern Miss has got Troy, and Monroe is Arkansas State. So we shall see if there's any big upsets early on. That would be the one thing you are not getting is upsets early on, major upsets early on. I don't think so. We'll see how that is matched up because, again, JMU and we'll say South Alabama go way down before they have to play. And then the next 2 seeds, Troy and Arkansas State, will go way down before they have to play. And I even think, Marshall and App State would go way down before they have to play. So first round would be, like Monroe, Coastal, Southern Miss, and Old Dominion. We'll see how that works out. Okay. Let's take a time out. Let's do a quick look-see at baseball and see what we got going for this weekend in the Sun Belt. We'll do that right after we come back and I tell you about PrizePicks. March Madness is here. There's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for your daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, it's easy, and it keeps every game exciting. This week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points and Zion Williamson for more than 25.5 points. I love how I can make my picks in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. When I win, my money hits my account in little as 15 minutes, no waiting around, and PrizePicks even offers weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt. Your teams every day. Probably should have copied this off and uploaded it, but a little bit late for that now. All right, weekend series. And there are some teams hosting. JMU is hosting Fairfield. I believe that's out of Connecticut. That is 2 p.m. today. App State is hosting Gardner Webb. That's also at 2 p.m. today. I even noticed I was hoping to catch Louisville, and I had Thursday off. But Louisville's hosting St. John's. I was looking to go to that game, but that's at like 1 p.m. on Friday while I'm working. I can't. That's not even starting at 3, where I could get the last 3 innings. Oh well. But these games are starting early, so they can get in, and it's not completely freezing. Marshall is at home hosting. I believe that's Fairleigh Dickinson, FDU. All right, that's out of Jersey. Yeah, it appears that way. Let's see here. Coastal hosting Rutgers. That's at 3 o'clock. ULM going to Missouri State. That one's in Springfield. Georgia Southern is at the Campbells. That was the name of my first fantasy baseball team, which has nothing to do with anything. But I think they made the NCAA basketball tournament that year, so my team was the Fighting Camels. Georgia Southern is on the road in Bowie's Creek, North Carolina. Troy hosting the Ivy Leaguers Penn. Troy had the big win over Mississippi State earlier in the week. Old Dominion looks like they're going to a tournament in Tennessee. Murfreesboro. We're outside of Nashville, Tennessee, because they're playing St. Bonaventure, and St. Bonaventure isn't in Nashville. So they're looking like they're going to a tournament in Tennessee. Georgia State is hosting Alabama A&M in Atlanta. Grand Canyon, outside of Phoenix, I believe, is going to Texas State. They're going to San Marcos. TCU hosting Southern Miss. So Southern Miss did get into the top 25, did fall to Ole Miss, but has a chance with a nice series win over TCU to prevent themselves from falling out of the top 25. Arkansas State is at Jacksonville State. South Alabama is hosting Jacksonville. So Jacksonville State is in Alabama, I believe, right? And Jacksonville is in, I know where that is. That's in Jacksonville, Florida. South Alabama got off to a good start. They did come up with a win earlier this week. I think they're back to 500. And the Cajuns bounced back with a win over, after losing to McNeese, they did bounce back with a win over Southeastern, kind of hanging on 9-7. Let me quickly go over the standings. Troy 8-1, off to a really good start. Coastal Carolina, Southern Miss, both 7-2. Georgia State and Texas State, both 6-2. ULM is 4-3. Cajuns 5-4. South Alabama 5-4. App and Georgia Southern and James Madison are 4-4. Arkansas State 3-6. Old Dominion 2-5. Marshall off to a tough start at 2-6. Although they did get a trip to Hawaii, so I can't feel too bad about the Thundering Herd playing baseball in Hawaii. All right, so we will recap. I'm working all weekend, so we won't have any episodes to go over until Monday. But the idea is, again, to have Matt Stewart on the show on Tuesday. He will be broadcasting the games. Unfortunately, he does the games from New Orleans, but then ESPN brings in somebody who has been doing all the games, which is sad, right? You'd like to have the guy who's been doing all the games get to do the final championship game, but that's not the way that it works. Matt does a great job. Unfortunately, he catches the flack for him not being at the arena. That's not his call, should be noted, right? It is what it is. It can't cost any, they paid for the studio in New Orleans. They should put them up it'd be a much better production in the arena. It costs the same amount of money. It really does. They can't be saving any more money if you're in, New Orleans. You can use the studio for something else, but you really should be using, for basketball, should be in the arena. All right. It is what it is. All right. So that's the idea. We'll have Matt Stewart on. Hopefully the plan is to have him on. We're going to record him on Monday and play it for Tuesday. All right. So we'll recap it. We'll recap the season finale on Monday and then preview the tournament on Tuesday. That is the idea. All right. Not sure if I said that correctly, but we'll record it on Monday, play it on Tuesday. All right. That is the deal. So everybody have a great weekend. Really appreciate the support. We're climbing to 1,900, going a little slow. And don't forget, we got about maybe about another 2 weeks before spring football is starting. Maybe we'll start to get some football coaches to hop on. Not holding my breath, but I will ask. It is what it is. We got more than half the baseball coaches, so that was pretty cool. All right. Really appreciate everybody's support. Thanks for hopping on. Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again on a Monday.